Chapter 13 is a reorganization of your debt by allowing you to consolidate all of your debt into one payment that you know you can afford based on your ability to pay. In essence, you take all of your debt and compose a plan that treats certain classes of debts in a like manner, and then you consolidate each class into one payment that you make on a monthly basis. So from your perspective as a client, you make one payment to a bankruptcy trustee each month, and that bankruptcy trustee then accounts for that payment and makes little payments to creditors on a monthly basis. Now, there are a lot of advantages to Chapter 13 that you don't get in a Chapter 7. For instance, if you owe more on secured collateral than it's worth, you can cram it down or pay only the value instead of what's owed. For instance, let's say you have a car loan, and like most people, you paid too much, and you owe $20,000 on it, and the car's now only worth $15,000. In a Chapter 13 case, in most cases, you can pay the $15,000 instead of the $20,000. We save the $5,000 plus the interest on the $5,000, and that helps us to get your payment down as low as possible. With respect to your credit cards and other unsecured debts, in most Chapter 13 cases, unsecured creditors only get paid a very small percentage, like somewhere between 1% and 10%. So for instance, let's say you had a $20,000 car loan and $30,000 in credit cards, and the car is only worth $15,000. Then in the bankruptcy, we're only going to pay $15,000 on the truck and maybe 10% of that $30,000 on the credit cards. So we're only going to pay $18,000 total on $50,000 worth of debt. And when we put that into one payment, you can see how it can be much, much less than what you're paying now. In a Chapter 13, there are other advantages that you don't get in Chapter 7. For instance, if you owe debts that are ordered to be paid in a divorce decree but are not child support or alimony, those do not survive a Chapter 7 case. You have to pay them. In a Chapter 13, you can get rid of them. So if your divorce decree says you have to pay for the credit card with Lowe's and protect your ex-wife from that debt, in a Chapter 7, your ex-wife can still take you back to court. With a Chapter 13, your ex-wife can't do anything about it. She's just like any other creditor, and she has to bite the bullet and end up paying Lowe's. The other advantage to Chapter 13 is that it's very inexpensive to get into. Attorney's fees in a Chapter 13 are paid for as part of your consolidated monthly payment. And so only a very small amount needs to be paid up front, along with a small court filing fee and a class that you have to do before you file. A couple other things about Chapter 13. You do have to pay unsecured creditors at least the value of your property. So if you own $10,000 in free and clear four-wheelers, the court's not going to let you get rid of $30,000 in debt and only pay 2%. They're going to require you to pay at least $10,000. So in a Chapter 7, which we discussed earlier, you would actually lose the four-wheelers and your creditors would take them and sell them. In a Chapter 13, you keep the four-wheelers and you pay their value to creditors. So from a creditor perspective, a 7 and a 13 end up paying the same. From a client perspective, in a 7 you lose your property, in a 13 you keep your property and pay its value over time in a consolidated monthly payment that's based on your budget and your ability to pay, so that you always know that you can afford it. Everyone qualifies for a Chapter 13, even those who have a great deal of income. So if you're worried about not qualifying, call our office, come on in, we'll evaluate it, we'll let you know how much your payment is, and you will qualify under Chapter 13.